Alright, this is the continuation from where I last left off. I'm going to try to make this one quick or keep this one at 30 minutes as well. So, last one was with regards to control and how you set up your settings when you first start Warframe, if you first start Warframe, and play the game for the long game, or even for the short game, or whatever type of game you want to play. Typically, these type of things are intimidating to people when they first play a game and they see so many options. All you need to do in any game is to load up that game and go straight to the options menu and great and go straight towards the customization controls. And you do that for any game. That's the easiest way to, I would say, safely balance off your exploration of the game as well as your combat in the game as well as your comfortability with regards to playing the game so it doesn't become tedious. But that's something you do on the standard. Now when it comes to combat or when it comes to execution of everything else, I would say, okay, so you know about controlling combat, you know about line of sights, you know about aiming down sights, you know about everything with regards to controlling the characters. You don't know how to use the powers, you don't know how the specific benefits that come from the powers and everything. That's the first thing you'll want to learn after you put all the controllers within your presets as well as your actions in place. So when you first start Warframe, if you're going to start Warframe, and for the long run, you see this character here, you see the weapons, and you see one, two, three, four, five, six slots, and you don't know what each of these means, and then you see slots on top. So the very first thing you should always focus on if you start this game is to make sure you roll over on the top one first. And once you roll over on the top one, make sure to always do this. Press R2 button on your controller. By pressing the R2 button on your controller, it brings up this menu. This menu, okay, so correction. The next thing you want to do before you set up all your controllers, before anything else, is to set up your menu. So controllers for buttons and actions first, for line of sight and for weapons and sensitivity. Second is set up your menu and interactivity for how you want it to go with regards to the game. In other words, Ortis is talking while I'm trying to talk. You can control that. So there's in-game settings for combat, line of sight, movement, and I guess visibility and opacity and all that stuff. That's with regards to missions. With regards to everything else that's not in missions, the passive stuff, as well as the stuff outside of missions that sometimes can affect inside your mission, such as sometimes you're in missions and then you see text pop up in the window. Like say if I decide to put the text up in this window, that text will now stay in that window. It won't go away based on the chat menu that I bring up. It would stay there and sometimes it would keep going and people would be talking while you're in mission. You can control these things as well as orders talking as well as certain interruptions with regards to your gameplay when you're in mission. Now, in order to do so, you have to understand you've now set up everything with regards to your controller. Now you proceed on to the next bit, and this is with regards to your system. And first thing you want to do, see, the main thing you want to always remember is this. When you first start in the game, load up the game, go to your options. The very first thing you always want to go to is controllers because that's you could bypass everything, you could deal with everything else in the game until it becomes a nuisance. So if you don't want those things to become a nuisance, you first take care of customization of control. But thereafter, very thereafter, the very next one thereafter would be with regards to interface. I was thinking maybe systems, but interface. because interface will show you exactly what your damage numbers are in mission, or if you don't want to see damage numbers pop up on enemies, you could remove that. If you want orders to shut the hell up, you could do that as well. And if you don't want certain things to pop up within your chat menu, you could also do that as well. So the next two that are imperative towards your comfortability with regards to any game as well as with regards to Warframe is always after you take care of your controller, always go to interface, because not all games are going to have social. Only mass multiplayer online usually have social. So you go to interface thereafter, and then social thereafter. So go to interface first, and it's important to do this because you could get by a game with social and interface interrupting you, but over time it'll become a nuisance. Sometimes it's even a nuisance to people as they start the game. So it's important to go to controllers first, set up your settings, and then go to interface thereafter. So you first go to customize themes, unnecessary. Show Tenno guides, unnecessary. These will pop up in mission. Show numeric separations. This is important. This is for you to interact with a vast amount of tethering throughout the game. Well, not tethering, but connections towards others throughout the game. Um, but it's not as important as you think. So let's say you leave that as default. Okay, let's go to default here. I put everything here, default. Let's go back. Social interface. Okay, so by default, this is here, this is here. I really don't like the sound, so I confirm. Okay, so this is all by default. It all goes back to default. So moving forward from there, you could skip most of the ones at the top. But when you get to UI cursor sensitivity is important because when you're outside of the mission, it'll become an interruption. How fast your cursor is moving. I'm moving my cursor right now. All this is imperative, especially when the social pop up when you're in mission. Because when social pop up when you're in mission, it's not the same as you be able to use your cursor to shoot down sights. Because once the button on your social goes over here, interrupts your movement towards your cursor sensitivity because it's acting with regards to interface and social rather than combat settings and movement of your cursor. Typically, combat cursor movement is affected both in mission and outside of mission. But specifically in combat, it's more based on line of sight, on controllers for line of sight rather than interface. So if you're interacting or you're doing something as an interface in the mission, in a combat mission, it can interrupt your actual line of sight or movement of your cursor needed for combat situations. It doesn't happen too often, but sometimes it can pop up. So you would do that regardless of what game you're playing. So I would say, since my cursor is moving pretty slow now because it's on default, and you would do this mostly when it comes to trading, buying, or even talking to people when you're not in mission. This is very important. The magnetism level. So, see, confirm. One thing I've never really liked is every time you confirm something, it always takes you out of the whole menu, takes you back into option. I never like confirming and then stay in this menu. It always takes you out when you confirm something. So let's try magnetism of 33. Okay, so it's a little loose. See, it's not as stiff right now. The magnetism movement with regards to buttons is not as stiff now. With regards to interface or interacting with buttons, it's not as stiff now. It's more loose. So let me put it at, say, 20%. 24%. Okay, that's good. Now let's increase the acceleration. See what would 50% acceleration do. Slightly. Let's see what 165 acceleration will do. Not so good. It's good here, but if you notice, it's good here with regards to interface, with regards to menu, is fast. But as you go outside, it's about the same. Yeah, it feels about the same. Feels about the same. So let's try something else now. Let's try cursor sensitivity. So it's now at 100. Let's see how sensitive we could make it. Let's increase it to about 158 or 150. No, or 160. Let's keep it at 160. Let's go up by 1 or 164. That's fine. Let's see the movement. So now it's too sensitive. See, because left and right, it's still kind of the magnetism for left and right. It's the closer it gets to the text, it becomes magnetized. But the further away from the text, all of a sudden, it's incredibly fast. So more to the center, it's magnetized, but more outside of the center, it's extremely fast. So that's no good. So what I want is more magnetism. Or let's say 122 acceleration. Still stiff. When it latches onto text, it's stiff. It needs to be fast, but it needs to. Let's try. Let's try 180. Let's try both of them at 180. Slightly better. The magnetism is going to hold on to it too hard though. Let's try magnetism of 17. Doesn't work. Okay, that feels a little bit better. So once you get it down to exactly where you want it to be, this should be perfect. 200, 200, and anything in the 30s or 25s should be fine. I keep it at 40. So once you get that down, it goes towards the speed. See, I got this at 40, 200, and 200. That's fine. Once that is done, that's with regards to sensitivity. It's the same as aiming down sights using controllers, but it's not for combat situations. It's for everything else outside of combat. The next thing you want to do is go on to scaling. Scaling is also important. It's the difference between seeing things very close to very far. For instance, based on the HUD itself, the scale of the HUD, you cannot see it. You just see the character right here. In combat, it's a different situation. Let's check it out. I'm going to pick, see this as an example. I'm going to be solo, and I'm going to go in a combat situation, regular combat situation. But I'm not going to be in combat. I just need to get into an open area to see how the HUD will look with regards to a character being in combat. It's important to get these things correct as you go when you first enter combat. Now you see this, all this, names popping up on people. These things can be avoided if they become too convoluted, or you can leave them if you choose to not do so. Like this mini map popping up, it's interrupting part of the HUD. It's interrupting your window, where it's overlapping over the character, and the text is also overlapping over the character. Now what you could do to solve this issue is to go back to interface and decrease its scaling to, let's say, 54. Now it's extremely small. It doesn't interrupt the character, but the text interrupts the character. Now, a word of advice, it's not a good idea to lower your text because you won't be able to see anything. But you can lower the map because at any time you could increase the map to the size that you want. But lowering the size of the map also lowers the gigantic map as well. So you should always understand that this is going to happen when you lower anything in your HUD. Everything that's on your screen is going to be lowered in a combat situations or in any combat situation. So I'm going to increase it to 70. So now it's a little bit bigger. Now you could decide to keep this mini map there if you want to, or you could decide to remove it completely altogether. It's really up to you. But do know if you accidentally press on the hub or accidentally press on your map, it will pop up extremely big on your screen, which might interrupt line of sight and visibility while in combat. So it's important to lower your HUD scale to a certain level, and this applies to any game. For right now, this is fine. Where I am, this is fine, because I can see where I'm going, and the size of the map does not interrupt. So that's one thing with regards to HUD. Why, after you go from controls, you go straight to interface and change those things. Change the sensitivity of movement so you could move your controller fast, and then change the size of everything you're seeing in front of you in combat situations as well as in passive situations. And then you move down to the next most important. So the first one will always be controllers and what buttons to configure your controller to. The next one would be with regards to your interface, with regards to changing your sensitivity when you're not in combat to moving things left or right. It could become an annoyance. The third would be based on what you're seeing in front of you, to make sure you're seeing everything accurately and it's not interrupting your line of sight to become a nuisance. So you lower the HUD scale. That's the third thing. The fourth I would say would be, let's see, show teams. These things are only for testing when you want tested numbers. Okay, so I guess these you could say these are only for testing, but if they also become a nuisance in your interface, you could also change them as well. You could turn them all off. Like show the team's names. Let's say you don't want to see the names of anyone. Show ability dot reticles. Show ability banner on Cass. Show enemy names. Let's say if you don't want to see the name of the enemy and the name of the enemy is Knock or Grenier or Corpus. You don't want to see the name of the type of enemy, Corpus enemy it is. You just want to kill. If you get used to it, you will not need to know the enemy's name. Or if it becomes a nuisance because they're text on everything, you would remove it. Show the health of enemy. I would typically have this on so when you're killing the enemies, you will have to know how much health that's on the enemy before the enemies die. Vice versa to with regards to more enemies showing up onto the field and they have more health. How to draw them all into a chokehold or how to bottle them all in a bottleneck. How to bottleneck all of them or to um, complete an oblique fold, a Romanesque type oblique fold. Forward charge, shields up, lower the enemy towards you or move towards the enemies, allow them to charge before you. Obviously, they will want to use the standard tactic of light troopers firing, arrows in order to kill as many or lower your health as fast as possible before engaging strong troopers to finish off the remainder of your health. You must also do this as well. Lower the enemy using the same tactic. So when you go in combat, if you're not 100% sure of your tankiness, it's ill advised to do this. You typically draw your enemy within line of fire so that your crowd control character, who could crowd control, lock them in place, or do a DPS damage from a vast range so that they could get damage, so that they could come towards you. They're now within your DPS range to charge at you to do attack. And typically, the fastest person within that group will be the first to get towards you. And that will typically be the lightest weighted combat fighter, which will be the person who has the lightest amount of health instead of the dudes that are strong in health. You get rid of them fast because their sole purpose is just not to kill you, it's just to lower your health enough for the strong ones. So basically, your tactic will always be to lock off the strong ones and kill as many of the light ones before they lower your health enough for the strong ones to do those damage. So you need to know the health bar of the enemies as well as the armor bar of the enemies or a shield bar of the enemies. If the enemy has shields and armor and health, you will want to lock that person off in the crowd control abilities. Take care of the little shenanigans, small ones, and then lower that big one into a chokehold where they could take a lot of damage from all your allies in one place rather than an ally going off to do their own thing. So I would typically have this one on. Sniper scope on as well. Map rotation, I will keep that off. Mark your pet. It's only important to mark your pet if I guess it's important to mark your pet. If your pet goes down, you'll need to know where your pet is. But sometimes people could give their pets strange names that you would think that it's the name of a Warframe that goes down. So you go and heal this person while at the same time you're taking fire while healing. And you don't realize that you're healing a pet. That's not as relevant as healing a fighter. Um, so I would say to keep this on just in case, because some pets have buffs that are essential for your survival and your group survival. Okay, and the last one would be overlay map fade, and it's the amount of, I guess you could say the amount of opacity or overlay fade that's essential for your HUD. and we'll see how that goes. At this amount, during a dark and stormy night, it looks fine. I could see it. Let's change that a little. And we'll put it all the way up. We'll see if any vast changes. Yes. The vast changes is the amount of opacity that was put within this transparent map versus the one with less transparency. You can see more lines rather than the opacity placed within the empty areas. Now, if you find that this is more important to lock in how you see the map itself, by all means do so. But if you find it not being that much of a big deal, you could skip that and go straight into social thereafter. So the next thing you want to do thereafter is go directly into social. So under social, after you finish your controllers and after you finish your interface, you want to go into social. And social is up to you to put whatsoever at all with regards to those people who you will join in combat, or those who you're talking with regards to trade, or anything that's non-combat related. And it's exactly what it says it is. It's social. So all squad invite from, I guess you could put that in all. Receive friend request from. Obviously you don't want to have this on. You want to put this mostly on friends of friends, because if you have it on all, that's a bad idea, because then you'll get everyone, every single person within this game who sees you either in combat or outside of combat, or even when they're not in combat, will be texting you because you have now requests from other people for trade or things that you don't want to do during the time, and it'll become an annoyance, especially in combat or when you're in a trade. So you would typically want to have this on friends of friends or have it on nobody, unless you don't mind having receive requests from all. Typically I have it on friends of friends. But then actually no. Now I think about it, I don't have it on friends of friends. If you're the warlord of a clan, it'll be a good idea, or if you're a leader of a clan, or if you're in the second command of a clan, it's a good idea to have it on all. Because sometimes you could receive a request from someone within your clan who needs help in combat, and won't be a good idea to have that on friends of friends, because not everyone in your clan or in your group or in your squad is going to be your friend. So it's best to have that on all, and then to identify if that person is in your clan or not. The next is receive gift from all. No, receive it from friends. You put receive it from friends or nobody. The only time you have receive gift from all is when, like I said, you're either in charge of your clan, or you're in second command, or you're the type of person that don't want any type of contact with anyone else. I have mines on all because obviously I'm the leader of this clan and I need to have it on all. I could personally ignore strangers if I want by just blocking them, but I'm not going to take it off all, especially if someone in my clan decides to give me something. If you're not leading anyone, if you're just in the clan, I would put it on friends or nobody. Receive clan invite from all, yes. Create creator mode. I'm not a creator. Hide some common spoilers and remove some common transmissions. Okay, so if you're not trying to spoil the game, let's say if you're streaming and it's your first time streaming the game and you're not trying to spoil the game to anyone, I would suggest to have this on. I'm going to keep it on just so that certain things aren't spoiled based on what a person see within the social. Like if I go and text something within the text box and then something pops up with relations to what that thing is, they've now been spoiled with what that thing is without them learning what that thing is by themselves. So in advance they'll be told what it is and then they'll question what it is. So if you don't want to spoil certain things with regards to certain characters, I would suggest to take it off. Manage ignoreless. You could skip that if you don't care. Enable, but if you do care, I would suggest try to invest in it just a little. But if it doesn't matter to you, you just ignore that. Enable survey, chat, show regional chat. Um, I would keep this the way it is. Let's see, show questions and show questions and answers in chat. Yes, if you need to learn something and no one within your client or no one on the game has answers and questions to certain things, I would want to have this on. Show recruiting chat. You always want to have that on, especially if you're looking to join a clan, or if you want to be part of a clan, or if you're talking to different clans, and especially if you're trying to recruit people into your clan or into your alliance. You would always want to have this on. Trade chat, you always want to have this on because you always want to trade. Message timestamp. This is voluntarily up to you. You would do this if only if you need to know exactly at what time, when you said it, how you said it, and what you said at that time. So if you screen cap what you said, it would show exactly the time and time zone for when you said it, at what time you said it. So if you don't remember something and you want to remember how long ago you said it, I would keep this on simply as a default. Now it won't show for other people's within your clan, but it will show for you. It's a nice little way to timestamp what it is that you're doing in the game and to keep yourself tracking how long you've been online versus how long you've been offline, or what you, if like say if someone is doing something they're not supposed to, you could timestamp when they did something that they weren't supposed to and log it by either screen capping it or video capturing it. And then you move on to the next. Privacy messages, yes. Achieve tag no notifications only. Yes, you could keep that the way just the way it is. Enable profanity filter. You definitely want to do that. Mute chat notifications. Yes, but only if you want to be notified of certain things. If you don't want to be interrupted of certain things, especially in combat, it's best to keep this off. Chat notification volume, I would say keep it at the halfway point. Sometimes it could get real loud. It could be like a beep, and you would think that it's something that's important, but it's just people talking or trading. I would say maybe 50 is too weak. I would say the volume for chat should be anywhere from 65 to 70%, or maybe I'll keep it at 60%. You'll keep that there. And then the next thing you'll want to do is to show emojis as text. This is a voluntary choice. If you want to be more playful and have more playful experience, you could show emojis as text. However, not every text will be shown as emojis, but sometimes it can be annoying for emoji to pop up. However, you can show a smiley face in conversation if you want to by typing the specific text, which is the colon, smile, colon, and then it will pop up. You could have that. Then you could have emoji colors. So it really depends on your type of style of enjoyment. So even if you don't put this on, let's say I save it and I go into the chat, and this is client chat, and this is alliance chat, and this is Q&A chat, and this is recruiting chat, and this is trade chat. Let's see, I go into Q&A, and since I put timestamp on, it's showing the timestamp of everyone here. And let's say I want to type something, and I type go. But then I go all the way down to my controllers, and I go on, where is it? Is it here? No. No. Okay, there it is. Alright, so you go to the lower section where it says square, send message, the square pop up, and then right next to it, it says L3. pressing L3 which allows for scrolling down. Pressing R2 allows for the emojis to pop up, or you could go directly to the emojis itself by touching on the emoji. So you can either bring up the emoji by pressing R2, or you could just touch on the emoji to bring up the emoji. And by pressing the emoji will now pop up as the text. And then thereafter, you could type in something such as awesome day, and it will pop up the emoji and the text that you sent. And right next to it, it will show the time for once you put it based on the timestamp and the text that you place, and based on the system that you're using. I'm using PlayStation 5. It will all be there. So it's just right there. You can either do it from options menu, and mainly you will always do it from the option social menu first, and then you go into the text and then include the information. But if you take it off, then it won't show there. So even if you decide to put emojis as text on or emojis as text off, let's say I put emojis as text on and I type go, the word go will still pop up, so the text won't show up. So that's why I say that one is not necessary in order to put in emojis whatsoever at all on their socials. So that's that. Now moving on from there, that should be the end of your social, your interface, and which was from yesterday's one, customized controller. So those are the main ones you want to concern yourself with. Now, when you're in combat, let's say for instance you don't want the chat window to pop up at all, or the recruiting window to pop up at all. It's right over here. You can remove it at any time while you're in combat. So the moment you go into combat, you can remove recruiting chat off from combat. You can remove Q&A off from combat. You can remove trade chat off from combat. You can remove clan. Where it says profanity, inline private message. No, you want to keep that. So you can take all these off and then apply it thereafter. And you press confirm. And now, once you press confirm, the only thing that's going to pop up is just going to be your clan and your alliance and everything else. So those are the things. See, the word Baruch is right there, blah. So now you go back to social and you scroll all the way down to all the things that you're taking off. However, I would say that they don't have, they do not have blocking and removing chat and alliance when you're in combat. So you will always see clan and alliance when you're in combat. That's the stuff you can't take off. However, you could take off recruiting chat, you could take off trade chat, messaging, you could even take off profanity, you could take off all of these, but you cannot take off clan and alliance chat while you're in combat. So that's the only poor part of social. I went to check it out in the interface, but it's not an interface either. So the only bad part about being in combat situations where you're firing left and right, if there are a lot of chatty catties within your clan, like say this, those texts are always going to be there. Now, if you lower the text to a small amount, you can do so. Like say, make the text smaller. However, if it's something important, you won't be able to see it. So as long as there's not a lot of chatty catties happening while you're in combat, it would eventually disappear in like 2 to 3 seconds, which is fine. And the only time it will reappear again is if you bring up the menu when you're in combat, and it will stay up there for, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, let's say 10 seconds, about 10 seconds most. So that's how you do it. So yesterday was about controller, today is about social and interface. All the ones you want to leave on, all the ones you want to take off, those are the main primary ones, because you have to change up your controller with regards to your combat situation that's most comfortable to you, because this is all the comfortability of a game is what makes it last more than anything. You change up all your settings. That's what I talked about yesterday. Then you change up your social and you change up your interface. That's the next thing. So if you first play any game and that game has a controller options to change up controller and an interface options and a social options, those are the things you want to change because those things will become a pain in the long run with regards to movability, with regards to things popping up do you want to pop up, with regards to HUD size, with regards to messaging or people texting you or a lot of stuff. Everything else can be dealt with. The sound and the audio can be dealt with in time, over time. But the things that would become annoyance real fast are typically things in interface, social, and your controllers, as well as the thing that goes under the word controllers. So when you change these things up, always remember this. Now that I've changed it up, the last of the last thing that I would say with regards to comfortability over default is your video as well as your audio. If you're in combat and you, especially if you're chatting with someone, if you have your volume all the way up and you're not in a party, you're now fighting against the game in order to speak to your friends, whoever's in your party. And if they don't have a good controller or a good headset, they won't be able to hear you based on volume amount. So you would have to start to yell. So I would suggest, especially if you're in party and not using the system in-game cooperation and squad cooperation, to lower your volume to a amount where you could hear the noise and hear the enemy, but not in enough to impede your capabilities in combat, where you could hear damage and you could hear the water and you could hear everything, but it won't impede you not being able to hear your allies in combat or the enemy coming up from behind and trying to sneak up on you. Most people keep it to 25 when they want to hear everything around them and when they want to hear people who aren't using chat party, and they just lower the master volume. However, other people would change up the individual settings, but they also keep the main volume on, which means you can keep the master volume on, but you can lower the song, the music's volume of everything else around except the main volume of the game. So let's say I want to lower sound effects. Now, the main volume of the game is up with regards to everything, but the sound effects is what's the problem. So now the sound effects has been affected, but every other volume is fine. So if you could identify what it is that's causing the issue, you just need to change that and that alone rather than change up any other settings. So all I did was just change the sound effects, and you could keep everything just the way it is. So it's important to identify certain things rather than to try to change everything. So moving forward from that, the Shaozen is not that much. Nor Knight is more of a passive situation when you're not in combat, hardly talk, but sometimes you can open your mouth while you're in combat. So considering that Ordis and Lotus and Nor Knight will eventually open their mouth in combat for whatever reason, out of the blue sometimes, I would suggest to lower their volume to about 60% or about 50%. But sometimes they will start talking simply because there is something in the mission that's attached to these characters, that's attached to Ordis, that's attached to Nora, that's attached to the Lotus, or that's attached to the Gustav 3, or it's attached to other Warframes, and the game will automatically tell you. Now you see the music starts, so that's an annoyance. There. Okay. Now let's go back. Now, that's audio. Those are the imperative parts of audio. That Manticore, you only use the Manticore when you start playing the instrument in combat or outside of combat. So that's not a problem. Same as the Schwauzen. And let's see, advance reverb quality, that's fine. Enable hint transmission, that's fine. Enable player hit marker sound. That's entirely up to you. That's voluntary or not. I'll just keep it as way it is as default. Enable radio chatter in orbiter. If you go towards the orbiter, the radio chatter in your ship, I'll leave right now and I'll save this. I'll exit right now and go back to my ship. If you decide to go back to the ship and check it every now and again, you don't need to hear radio chatter because you're actively doing it. Now, the important part about what that is somewhat important is if you're busy doing other things in the game and you don't have it on, it will sometimes tell you that there's a tactical alert or is there something that's happening on a specific planet and you would not have known because it's not on. So it's always good to have it on just in
Who
case
have we got on the
because it's not
and
going to
we're
come on
out.
and it's because it's not going to come on by itself. So by default, it's up to you of your comfort based on the situation that you're in to keep it on or to not keep it on. If you check it all the time, you don't have to keep it on. But if you do check it, you don't check it all the time, it's best to keep it on. See, it's on. Sometimes they talk about nothing but nonsense and has nothing to do with anything that's imperative for your survival whatsoever. But sometimes it does give you important information. So by default, it always has it off. The default has it off. But every now and again, you need to have it on. So it's up to you when you want to have it on and when you don't want to have it on. I typically keep it by its default off. So moving forward from that, you have enable voice, voice of other players, and sometimes it will give you options to tell you exactly what it means. So when you roll over these things, each one of them, sometimes some of them give you hint into what it means. This one says the option will not take effect until you create or join a new session. So you would hear the voice of certain people who have joined that session when you join them if you have this on. So you will automatically hear them. So let's say you're not the type of person that give a damn what anyone thinks and you want to farm by yourself, but you want to join a squad of people, strangers. It's best to always have it off. It's on default because the game or the people
Stand
from who
by
made
while
the
I
game.
analyze the intelligence profiles of the Grenier. Error, not a number. Did the operator enjoy this witticism?
I need to take orders off. Wait a minute. Can I take orders off? I check interface. Interface. HUD. Yeah, I don't think you're able to take orders off. For some reason, wait. System. Crossplay. Region. Gore. Controllers. Sometimes he will just randomly open his mouth and interrupt what you're trying to do. No, definitely not. Accessibilities. Okay, so I'll go to accessibility. So after you created your volume and this is fine. This is only when you want to hear people or when you don't want to hear people. So primary, the first one was yesterday, controller. Move on to the next one thereafter, interface. Roll after the next one after, third, social. And then we move on to audio and video, fifth and sixth. So once you have all these, okay, fifth and sixth, brightness, how bright you want the game, how bright you don't want the game. Especially when you're streaming, it depends on who you are. Contrast, how much color you want into the game, how much color you don't want into the game. Up to you. Field of view, extremely important, both in combat and outside of combat. How much you want to see around you versus how much you don't want to see around you. Right now, I'm seeing everything around me from a 180. 180 left, 180 right, and I'm seeing the Warframe, not his whole body. I'm seeing his head all the way slightly below his buttocks. When you're aiming down sight, you'll be able to see and understand this. So let me just do this. Good example. I'll go to see this again. This is very important because it's the difference between enemies coming at you from left and right to enemies coming at you from left or right and you can't see them. If you see an enemy closing in suddenly, a butcher, you could get one shot, especially if the butcher is like a level 120 butcher. Okay, so here it is. Actually, no, that's not it. That's standard interface HUD. Where it is? Konzo. Okay, Konzo.
Ayo. Shola.
I do have it on solo only. Okay, good. Which means no one would join me. I said this in the last video with regards to your controller. The names on people are there because I decided to leave it on every single name of characters in the game. So various people are there. You can remove the name of various different clans and various people's name if you want, if you don't want to see their names. I did increase and decrease the HUD. So the word 450, no, 540 to 1070 is the size where you could see it. The map is the size where you could see it. And now I could see my character and his entire body, almost his entire body. I can't see his back legs, but based on looking straight, I could see his forward legs. So I aim down sight, all of a sudden, the buttocks is now gone and it's only towards the waist. But I could now, the closed area, this has been closed in and locked in. Now, if I, let's say if I'm doing this and I'm shooting Pum, and the enemy decides to teleport by me from the side, and I'm aiming down sights and I can't see, he'll swing to the left and to the right towards me, but I might be able to see it. I will still take damage, but I might be able to react fast enough in order to see that he was there. However, he might be able to get two shots on me rather than just one if my line of sight, my field of view or field of view is lessened. So now that the field of view is now lessened, I go like this. I can't see the enemy that's coming to me from the right. I could see the enemy that might come to me from the left, but not from the right. I mean, not from the left. I could see enemies coming to me from the right because this is a wide gap here based on where my Warframe is standing. But I won't be able to see enemies coming at me from the left. So if an enemy was to hit me, I would assume if I'm getting fired upon, it's an enemy that shot me from the front, where it could very much be a butcher from the left. And I'll be able to take like more than one damage from a slash, which is a bad thing. So it's important to understand, have wide field of view is more important than have lock-in field of view. That's something you only do when you're sniping, not so much as when you're in crowd control combat. So let me go back to field of view. Field of view. My voice is a little hoarse today. Alright, so that's that. As long as I could see the enemy, that's fine. Now, if if it's important for you to see down sight more, you could always attach a mod towards the gun that you have that will allow you to zoom in more. And you can put that in an augmented slot in order to see down sight more without taking away from your field of view. So that's entirely up to you. Now that that's said, now I can move on. That was audio, and this was video. First thing I changed in video when I went to video was brightness, contrast, field of view. Moving down from that, I would say the last thing you need to change are these under advanced. These are the last things you need to change under in advance. And you do all of this either before you get into combat for your first combat or after your first combat and you test it out. You would change this and remove this. Motion burst, decrease your streaming quality. In other words, it forces your system to try to push the graphics to create the motion blur effect, which is put more strain upon your system itself in order to get the quality of visual you want to get off. And that does interfere with your streaming if you're streaming, or your video quality if you're recording a video from your PlayStation. Depth of field also interferes, but not as much. Distortion definitely interferes. Glare definitely interferes. And film grain definitely interferes. When I was playing Evil Within 2, I lowered the film grain because the more film grain you add also increase the amount of power and pressure that the PlayStation has to push out for to make sure it gets that visual feel and aesthetic feel that the game gives to you. However, all those grains are small little dot compositions, and the game has to create all those little dots per each layer on top of the character themselves. So it has to consider those as well if you're going to include them, as well as bloom. You remove that as well, because bloom gives a certain type of glaring bloom gives a certain type of shine to a character, and that takes away from the overall system as well, because now the system has to put the power of the game into effect in order to get everything the way you want it to happen. Let's see here, what else? Color corrections. This is, I guess that's okay. Weapon elemental effects. Not really necessary. As long as you know the elemental type, you don't need to see the effects of the elemental type. Um, Character shadows, no. Sun shadows, no. Enhance decals, up to you. Um, and dynamic resolution versus user resolutions. Resolution amount, you always want to have resolution all the way up, especially when you're doing streaming if you want a smooth looking video. So you would keep that as auto, or I guess you could keep it as user resolutions all the way up. Completely up to you. And that will be that for, I would say, for this video, except the last of the last one, which is passive abilities or passive uses of your controllers separate from you using your controllers, and putting certain things or putting certain buttons in different places. I would say the accessibilities, if you don't want to aim towards the controller, or you want to ignore the controller, which you really shouldn't, you could always go straight to accessibilities and make minor changes, such as hold to sprint. If you don't want to hold to sprint, you could take it off. But you don't need to press hold to sprint, especially if you change up things within your controllers. That's why I say it's up to you to use accessibilities if you want. It's not really necessary, but it's only necessary for certain things. If you change your sprint button to something else and you just press down on that button, it will stay on that button. But if you go to accessibilities and you, I guess, let me see, let me take this off and try it. I don't think I've ever done this before. Okay, it's not sprinting, so I'll remove that. Even though sprint is on this controller right here, I press the up button, he did not sprint. So hold to sprint, I take it off. By default it was off, so let's see what will happen now. I press up, he's sprinting. I press up again, he's not sprinting. Beautiful. So accessibilities come in clutch if you're not switching certain things up with regards to your controller. So by typical, if you are going to switch anything up with regards to your controller, you must have to change certain things up with regards to your accessibility as well. If you change nothing up with your controller, you don't have to change anything up with regards to your accessibilities. But if you do change things up with regards to your controller, or with regards to interface, or with regards to social, then you have to change things up with regards to accessibility, such as sprint, aiming, hold to aim, tap. Did I hold when I was aiming? Yes, I was holding when I was aiming. Did I tap? Yes. Enable control aim assist, up to you. Colorblind compensation, up to you. If you're having colorblind issues, modifications are there to help you. Visual effects intensity. Typically, you want to have your intensity of any visual effects lowered because you put a strain on your machine. I typically have mine at 40 or 45%. I'll keep it at 36% for this video. Um, Reduce teammate visual effects. Teammates visual effects. Yes, if I reduce my teammates visual effects, it also reduces my machines seeing the visual effects from my teammates. Enable screen shake if I want to, yes. Interface. Here's another interface. Show subtitles, yes. Enable hub motion. Let's see what that does. Yes. I can turn the map around. That's fine. Enable HUD motion is fine. Now let's see how it works without it. Prefer default HUD as drifter. No, I'll leave that the way. That's not good. Or it depends on who you are. No, actually, it's about the same. Yeah, so okay, so I'll go back. Yeah, so it doesn't really matter. So yep. So those are the ones that you need to always remember with regards to the game. You start any game, you go to your controller, change up the controller, see what the presets are as well as the actions are for the controller. Once that's done, you then move on to the interface because regardless of what you're interfacing with or interacting with, it might interrupt your actions with regards to fighting in combat. Let's say you have to interact with a chest while you're in combat. If you're fighting to open the chest while you're in combat, someone could one-shot you, and it interrupts your combat scenario, and your game ends. Or if it's not a scenario, it's just a actual boss fight or something, and you need to unlock something in order to, like say, detach a part of the boss's body. It's essential to have an interface that's fast enough or at least accommodate you enough in order to decrease that annoyance, as well as social. If another annoyance, if this pops up while you're in combat because you have too much within your screen, that could be a problem. However, if it doesn't bother you, you could always put it there. As long as it's up to you, it's entirely up to you. You could put regional chat on, you could put Q&A chat on. If it doesn't bother you, it's fine. But if it bothers you while in combat, it's also a good idea to take it off. So interface, controller interface, social, audio, video, and accessibilities, and you're pretty much done. Then when you go into mission, your first mission, or let's say your second mission, you now have the comfortability of a practical comfortability of doing things versus if it was set by default. Because default at many times is stupid, and it doesn't, and the people who make the game don't understand things from the point of view of gamers. They understand things from the point of view of what they've created. When you go to a movie, the director who's making the movie can't see things from your point of view. He can only see things from his point of view as the person who's directed the movie. He would have to ignore his directorial mindset, take about a year off, or not even a full month off, not do any movies, and then go and watch the movie he made to see how it played out, whether he enjoyed it or whether he did not enjoy it. As long as his mind is still within how he made the movie, he will always be scrutiny, or it will he will scrutinize the movie regardless, but he will always have more scrutiny towards the movie if he's actively still directing versus if he's not directing anymore, if he took a break from directing. It's the same thing with regards to this game and any game for that matter. So those were the main ones. Yesterday I did the controller. Today I did the social, the interface, the video, the audio, and the accessibilities. And those are the ones that you will always want to pay attention to more than anything. Now, things with regards to system is not that big of a deal because the game by default will always have the right settings by default for the general systems of the game. You will always want like this based on your district area. This will be the region that you want to have. However, if you want to increase your range region, especially when it comes to your system picking up on, let's say amount of people you want to play with. Let's say you want to play with only 3,700 and or 3,074 or 3,080 um, that the game allows to. You've limited yourself to amount of people that might be able to join you in combat. Whereas if you increase that amount to a high number, yes, I was able to get back. So if you increase your value to a higher amount, you'll be able to join more people based on this. Now, ping, ping reticent or ping limit is the amount of connections with regards to your network. So if your network has a low ping value, it'll be hard for you to connect to um, someone else's, or should I say, someone else's main mother hub, or I'm trying to use a word to understand based on computer lingo. To Okay, so there are four people in a group, and one of the person has to be the main dominant factor with regards for you to connect to in relations to their hosting. So if you have a limited ping amount, it'll be harder for you to connect to that person. It's the same as if you have a limited ping amount, it'd be hard for you to connect with regards to your network in relations to the game itself because the ping value is much low. It's more in relations to the quality of the game and the behavior of the game with regards to other people playing the game in contrast to, well, not in contrast, in relations to yourself. So ping amount is important to get that ping like ping, ping, ping. It's like a beacon. So if your beacon is small, they won't be able to identify, or the network quality will not be able to identify based on that ping, that beacon ping. So you always want to have a larger ping or no limits to a ping. Well, I wouldn't say that. Low ping value is bad. It would even give you a warning. High ping value is very good. But too high or no limit might be not what you're looking for. So I would say 400. I would say the most Warframe gives is 400, and then it has no limits after that. I would put ping at 400. I'm not sure about no limits. I've never tried it before, so I'll keep my ping value at 400, and I'll keep my network ports at 900. I mean 4,950 to about 4,955 in relations to who are going to be connected in relations to the game itself, or with relations to the game itself and myself. So ping value, the amount of beacon pings or identifying pings, it's like a light at a light tower or um, a beacon tower at a dock. Uh, the stronger the light is, the more the ships are going to be able to identify the beacon tower or the light tower. The lower it is, it's bad. So that's what that is. It It's not that essential because by default, I don't want to set it to default because the whole thing might go to default. By default, it's at a reasonable rate based on where you're living, and at a reasonable amount based on how many people you want to connect to. However, too high a value, maybe I have it at too high a value, might strain my system. Um, but 3,000 to me is not that good, so I'll keep it at 4,950. I might have to change certain things with regards to what I've said, but if I remember correctly, that's how it goes. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure I'm accurate with regards to that. If not, if I'm a little bit off, then so be it. Because I'm not so concerned with regards to this, I'm more concerned with regards to customize customization. I'm more concerned with regards to social. I'm more concerned with regards to interfaces. Those are the main ones. Controller, interface, social, and audio and video. Those are the important ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are the important ones. And the last important one would be 6. So I would say that's it for this video, but I'm going to give a test run of everything I've just said. So all the settings have been set for preferred comfortability versus default comfortability, and I'll show an example of how that feels while you're in combat. So I'll remove it from, oh okay, so I'll get out here. I'll leave, see this, and go back to my ship, and I'll show how that works in combat. Why it's good to have the practical comfortability versus the default settings. It increases the life of a game and increases the longevity of a game. So where something would have been meh or mid, it becomes even longer lasting because it has those options. So I will always have things that say you failed mission because I don't care. I don't care about that stuff. Even my status says I failed a lot of missions. That's because I don't care, because that doesn't matter. None of that matters. If I wanted to not fail something, I will always turn off my system and turn it back on, and it will never be able to identify that I failed something. But I don't care about that because that in this game that doesn't mean nothing. Only stupid people believe that means something. Okay, so now I'm going to put it on public, and I'll try it. Let's say, do I have anything to level up? No, not really. Okay, so now as you can see, everything is working based on all those controls. I have a wider view from left to right. I could pull up my chat window. I could move left and right, fast, up and down. My settings with regards to what I could select to, I could scroll over those faster. I could see my Warframe from the midsection all the way to his head rather than close enough. In combat, when you zoom in, like if you press your L2, the chat is popping up now, but in combat, if an enemy pops up from you from the side, you could get done sir done real quick. Let's try the Viri. Might as well.
Do you remember the old war, operator? Or does team...
Now in combat, I've also did something else. I've cut off the chatter with regards to who I've joined. So I won't be able to hear them when I join them. But if they do hear me, it's because I have the mic on. The HUD text has been at a certain size, as well as this Warframe while blocking L2, L3. If I increase the HUD text amount, those texts would have been overlapped over my character. I just press the up button to run. I press the up button again to now walk. I never have to take it off once I press the up button again. Like most games, you have to hold down all the time to run. He will always stay on the run ability now, and it will never come off until I decide to do so.
The Prince of Fire.
The volume of the characters is too high because I did not lower the volume of the because I chose not to, but I could.
Legion of farty little ancestor phantasms is attempting to deny me.
Movement is good. The HUD, if you notice, the HUD is good. If I want to make the map big, I can make the map big. The map is a decent size. The map doesn't interrupt me. It doesn't interrupt my character either. The mini map is not large enough to interrupt my character's head, and I could resize it at any time and take it off at any time. And it's not the center button, which is my abilities. I've made my abilities on my controller right here. I removed the map, which would have been in the center button, and I kept all the abilities on the center button so that if I accidentally press down on center button, the map doesn't pop up when I actually want to do an ability. The characters are on the map because I left a player character so I could see on the mini map. I could remove them from the mini map or from the game so I don't see their names or their icons if I don't want to, but I did not, which is something you shouldn't do. Someone has placed a waypoint. You could also place a waypoint as well. I've made my accessibility of my weapons good, so I could also press a waypoint at any time and remove it at any time, like this. My waypoint floor, remove it at any time.
The most petty and trivial things could spark Lodin's anger, but the flames quickly rose.
This'll sting! Quick and clean!
I kept the damage numbers on so I could see the damage numbers and the health. His health is at half so I could see it, so I don't have to focus on him if I don't need to.
Archer's finished!
I could kill him at any time. If he becomes a problem, I then lower his health some more. If there's stronger enemies around, I don't focus on him. I focus on stronger enemies because he might die from the AoE if his health is 25%. His health is big. Let's see.
Get a portal open.
I won't focus on him. If I do an AoE, it might take care of him who has lower health. So I spend more time on the others. So it's not necessary to have your player's health on, but kind of necessary to have your enemy health on so you could see exactly who they are. If you notice, the white one means they're taking damage, which means they're not taking that much. But if I hit them with some, if I hit them hard enough, it goes from white to red. Yellow means that they're taking crit damage, or they're taking heavy damage. Red means they're taking crit damage, which means I'm doing significant damage every time I do the yellow. So in many ways it's good to have the enemy's health numbers on so you can see if you're doing crit or if you're just doing average numbers. And that's it for today's Warframe lesson. Or should I say, that's it for any games lesson if they do their games correctly. Always have your enemy's numbers on so you can see if you're doing actual crit damage or regular damage. Always have your settings to the type of amount that you need to enjoy the experience. And